Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. This is Mr. 6507, as always, on my own channel. And I decided I would be doing a dream PC build and going over essentially how to make a perfect crate box PC like I just built. Only mine's in a case now. But if you want to do this on the cheap, get a perfect LAN PC out of it, I will explain. So here we go. The notebook of PC building. With all PCs come good design. Milkcrate. There we go. So, the idea of the Milkcrate PC is to build your own tower out of two milk crates stacked on top of each other. Milkcrate 1, Milkcrate 2. And inside of these holds all of the components on top of it for your computer in a light case that pretty much is plastic carbon fiber and it's too cool for school. Now the problem with this case, and the reason why I got rid of mine, is because I had flaws. Flaws that will be fixed in this design. You can't have a big motherboard. So, no. And you have to be prepared for dust. So, dust. If you want expansion and you don't want dust, this is not the PC for you. However, if you want an easy LAN box and cheap, then this is for you. Now you have to start with a basis of 3 parts for the computer. You can't really make it out of other computers like what I would do personally, just because that's more fun. It's like making Frankenstein machines. This, you can Frankenstein, but you need to start with 3 things. Well, actually you need 5 things for this now that I think about it. Now, you need 5 things for this computer. 2 of which are these little DVD crates, and I can find them at the dollar store, and it's a Family Dollar, and I'm pretty sure that they're like, because it's a chain, every other one will have them. Just check during the summer. It'll be like or like Easter. It'll be like a gift cart thing. But the other thing is you're going to need, because you cannot Frankenstein this whole computer together. I've learned that. You need a motherboard that is mini ITX, a processor, and you'll need RAM, because they usually go hand in hand like that. Everything else is pretty much on your own to find. So what I've chosen for this is basically the cheapest possible build you can do with existing parts and the cheapest possible everything. So what you want to do is, first you need a donor PC. Just going to draw a tower with a sad face on it. There you go. Next, you need your motherboard. RAM, expansion slot. Actually, I put the CPU in the wrong spot, but you get the gist. RAM. Boop, 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 boop. And you're going to need the processor. Should have wrote CPU. Not to be confused with RAM. So, I've listed out things to do because you want mini ITX motherboard. The reason why you want mini ITX is because on micro ATX, you have a motherboard, and it has it has 3 to 4 slots on it. The problem with this being, here's your RAM, and here's your expansion slots, that when you put this in the crates will not line up. They'll kind of like sit and hover over each other, and that leaves your CPU, or your motherboard, sorry, as the kind of support rail for this thing, and then you get all this tension which causes it to do this, which is exactly what mine did. Now, I had a DTX one, which meant that it only had 2 expansion slots. The problem was that it wasn't doing this as bad, but it was still doing this. This is bad. But if you get a micro ITX motherboard, you can completely execute my plan as planned, and you can actually do it cheaper. Heavy base. And then you will have your motherboard sitting inside of here, and the boxes will sit on top of each other. Now, the motherboard I picked out for this is an Asus ROG FM2 A88X ITX Plus, and it's an FM2 motherboard, which, if you're familiar with PCs, or you're just getting into it, the FM2 is a really good thing for you, because it keeps everything on the cheap. Basically, you buy the motherboard, you buy the processor, and you don't have to buy a graphics card if you don't want one right away. You'll get, with this, you can basically skip the graphics card confusion if you haven't bought one ever, and you can also skip the whole price of buying one to begin with. Now, the CPU the APU that I chose with this is the A10 6800K Richland 4.1 GHz or 4.4 GHz turbo socket FM2, and it's a 100-watt quad-core processor. Plus, it has the 8670D in it, which is a 384-core processor, so it is essentially equivalent to the GT630, and if you really think about it, it's actually more equivalent to the GTX 650s from NVIDIA. And as an AMD comparison, it's about the same as a 7770, if I remember that correctly. So this is a really good basis. It's only $139, and the motherboard's only $89. So it'll run you to about $200, little over it, about $220, which is pretty good. Now for RAM, I always choose Crucial, just because Crucial Ballistics, Crucial RAM is the safest RAM you can possibly buy. It's just a good trusted brand, and it's usually on sale. If you want to pick up 4 gigs you want 8 gigs. That's pretty much it. Just go with 8 gigs. It'll be future proof. And you can go with 4 gigs, or you can 2 sticks of 4, or you can go with 1 stick of 8, like I have. Sometimes, depending on what sales are going on, one will be cheaper than the other. But the difference majorly is if you have 1 stick, you'll have room for expansion. If you have 2 sticks, you won't have room for expansion, but it'll be dual slot, and dual channel, and you'll be able to run both at the same time, and technically it's faster. So now that we have all 3 of our components, we can continue on. Now, the design behind the crate box is that of simplicity and Tetris, essentially. Now, when you draw a motherboard, we're going to start with an ITX one. There'll be an expansion slot, and then you'll have your CPU over here, and then you'll have RAM. And then you'll have your power plug will be right here. Well, to get the crate box to not short out and not cause any issues, you're going to need an index card or some kind of piece of paper. And you're going to need an existing power supply. So what you do is you start with just your bottom crate. And you're going to lay your power supply in it, so it kind of sits like this. You'll have room on the side here, and you'll have cables coming out of one end, and you'll have a plug on the other. Probably you'll have to cut out the crate, which keep a pair of side dikes, and just cut out all the holes that you actually need. as for everything else, you'll have to, like, it'll kind of, if you look at it from the side, it'll also just look like this. Now, the idea behind this is, now that you have your bottom box with your power supply laying in it, and you have all your cables coming out, that's cables, your motherboard will go, and you'll flip it upside down, so your expansion slot is at the top, sort of in actually like an OEM fashion, and then your power supply, or sorry, your audio connector will be here, or your PS2 connector, whatever will be on the end, and your power supply connector will be right here. And you'll have a piece of paper on top of your power supply, bent around the corner. If this was your power supply, it would look sort of like this, and your motherboard will go down on top of that and slide next to it. It'll like lock into place on the side of it. So it'll pinch between that and the thing, and it'll lock your motherboard vertically. Now this sounds really like a janky method, but you'll understand why we need the paper, because it'll short out, and it'll also put your CPU cooler right here. So it makes it kind of convenient, because your PSU, if you get a top-mounted airflow one, will actually do one of these things, where the airflow will come in, go to your CPU, go here, and then kind of just go out the side. It makes like its own built-in airflow. Plus there's so much air going through the crate boxes that you won't ever have to worry about the stock cooler being ridiculous unless you're overclocking. Now, this essentially is what you want your computer to look like. The reason why I went with Mini ITX, though, is because if you add another expansion slot, you add another spot on top, and that makes your ITX motherboard too big. So, once we've got everything built, I wish I could do this with actual parts, but I don't. You've got your... God, I'm horrible at drawing. You've got your bottom crate with your PSU in it. You've got your motherboard coming out. And you've got your top crate on. Oh, this is becoming super 3D. Here we go. So now you can see that you have your motherboard, power supply. And basically what you do is you can put your hard drive in anywhere you really want it, and you just zip tie it to the side. So you can have your hard drive on the outside if you really wanted a super modular effect to it. Like you could essentially do one side up. So if you have your two crates here, you could do several like laptop drives or SSDs, and you could do like a RAID type array on the side. Also, Sweden. So from there, you mount your hard drives, which you get from your donor PC. You get your power supply from your donor PC, and because we're building it with just the processor right now, you don't even need a big power supply. If you had a 250 watt one, your processor is going to take 100 watts. Your motherboard's going to take 30, and like take off, I don't know, 20 more, and you'll basically have 100 watts left over. You'll like have a really nice power efficient PC that'll run pretty much every Xbox 360 game. So from there, that's everything that we need to do, and you just put it together. That's how simple it is to build an AMD crate box. It's probably the cheapest PC you can build. Now, if you really want to go the extra distance, you can find out what if you really want to go the distance, you can actually link a GPU that matches your APU into there from AMD, or you can just go and you can upgrade to the next best thing. Now, the problem with the crate boxes is they only support about a 6-inch card, which limits you in how big your cards can get. You're not going to cram a Titan into one of these things. If you do, it would kind of hang out the side, and you'd get this really weird mailbox design. Plus, you'd have to cram a really big power supply, and stuff would get really hot, because now you've got everything on top of each other. But, because of this, NVIDIA turns into your best bet. And you can do an AMD build too, technically. Now, for upgrading your crate box, in terms of GPU, what you can do, without getting a bigger GPU, as long as you have anything that's smaller than 400 watts, you have several upgrade routes. In fact, well, 400 watts plus, technically. If you have anything that's basically, I would say 250 watts would be the minimum. You can go and you can get, on the AMD side, you can get an R7 260X, and I would suggest that you have about a 400 watt minimum for that. Or you could go and, if you have a power supply that's greater than 250 watts but less than 400, you can go the NVIDIA route, and you can go and you can get the new GTX 750 Ti. And if you get the EVGA one, you'll get a very convenient small one. So, thank you for watching the Super Crate Box build. And finally, I would like to thank you and leave you with some ideas for building one. You can build one out of Intel. It's going to cost you about $300 more off of the bat if you really want to build a super gaming PC out of it. And you're going to have to find a dedicated GPU that will fit in here. So this is why I never went with Intel with it, which actually limits the amount of motherboards you can get because of AMD. So some thoughts, if you want to leave them in the comments. Like, if you really want to build a crate box and you just don't know where to start, or if you need like a suggested build list, I can help you out. If you're confused about what you need for a donor PC, I would suggest anything after 2007 that at least has a some SATA ports inside of it. So you want SATA ports, and you want pretty much a hard drive bigger than 250 gigabytes. That's all I'm running. Yeah, I mean, as long as you're not trying to run Titanfall on this, you'll be fine. I mean, and Titanfalls technically would still fit on here. You'll just end up with 200 left. So, with that, I bid you adieu. And so, yeah, leave a comment. If you would like to see more random builds that I think of because I'm a computer engineer in college, let me know and I'll start building. Thanks. Bye.